Once upon a time, in a village nestled between a river and a forest, lived a poor woodcutter and his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel. They lived in a tiny cottage with a thatched roof and peeling paint. The woodcutter worked hard to put food on the table, but his wages were small and his children's needs were many. His wife, who had passed away, was dearly missed by both him and his kids. One night, after a particularly meager meal of watery soup, the woodcutter's heart broke for his children. He could not bear to see their empty bowls, and he feared that if things continued like this, his children might starve. His new wife noticed his sadness, and though she did not understand his grief, she did not appreciate his brooding. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped at the woodcutter. "You are upsetting the children. Either find a way to feed them or get rid of them." The woodcutter's heart sank. He knew his wife was a cruel woman who cared more about herself than anyone else. "But what do you suggest?" he asked her, hoping she would relent. "We can't feed them anymore," she hissed, glancing at the sleeping children. "We must leave them in the forest." The woodcutter felt a chill run down his spine. He loved his children with all his heart and could never do such a thing, but his wife stood firm, and before he knew it, she had convinced him that it was their only option. The children woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside. The sun streamed through the window and danced on their eyelids. They stretched and yawned and got out of bed without knowing that this day would change their lives forever. Their father stood by the door, tears in his eyes. Their stepmother, with an evil grin, held out 2 loaves of bread. "Here, take this," she said, "and go play in the forest until we call you back. Don't stay too long, though, because then we won't hear you when we call you." Hansel looked from his father to his stepmother and back again. Something was off, but he could not put his finger on it. Trusting their father, the children took the bread and headed toward the forest, skipping happily. As they walked deeper and deeper into the trees, they heard their father's footsteps getting farther and farther away, and soon the only sounds they heard were the wind whispering through the leaves and the birds singing in the branches. Hansel turned to his little sister and asked, "Do you hear that, Gretel? Father hasn't called us back yet." "It's all right," Gretel said, trying to sound brave. "Let's just wait here a while longer." As the minutes dragged on, Gretel began to feel scared. She looked at the bread in her hand and suddenly an idea popped into her head. "Hansel," she whispered, "don't worry. I have a plan." Hansel looked at her, surprised by her sudden confidence. "What do we do?" he asked. Gretel, with a determined look on her face, replied, "Follow my lead." That evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows on the forest floor, Gretel nudged Hansel and said, "It's time to go home." But when they turned around, they realized that they had no idea which way they had come from. Panic started to rise in their chests, threatening to choke them. Just then, Hansel felt something crunch under his foot. He looked down and saw a white pebble. "Look, Gretel," he said, "I think this might help us." Hansel and Gretel carefully followed the path of pebbles all the way back to their cottage. Their father was so relieved to see them and scolded their stepmother for leaving them in the forest. But she just shrugged and went back to her room. That night, Hansel and Gretel snuggled close to their father, whispering stories to chase away the shadows that danced on the wall. But the next morning, when the sun peeked through the curtains, their stepmother was waiting for them with a wicked smile on her face. "You lazy bones," she snapped. "Are you still sleeping? Get up, we're going back to the forest." Hansel and Gretel exchanged worried glances, but knew better than to argue. As they walked into the woods, their stepmother led them deeper and deeper until they couldn't see the cottage anymore. "Now remember," she said, turning to the children, "we will be back for you when we call you, but don't wait for us. Find some food and eat it." With that, she pushed them gently in the direction of a thick grove of trees and disappeared. At first, the children were scared, but then they remembered their adventure from the day before. Hansel reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of pebbles. "Let's leave a trail again," he suggested. Gretel nodded, and together they started dropping pebbles on the ground. When it started to get dark, they looked back and saw that they had made it quite far. "I can't see the path now," Gretel whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. "Oh, how will we find our way back home?" Hansel thought for a moment. "Don't worry, Gretel," he said. "I have another plan. Instead of pebbles, they now drop pieces of bread. There," he said, pointing to the last piece of bread. "Leave this here, and we'll follow the crumbs back to the cottage." Gretel wiped her tears away and thanked her brother. Together, they raced away from the bread until they could no longer see it. Then they started walking back the way they came. When they arrived at the edge of the trees and saw the cottage, their stepmother was nowhere to be found. Relieved, they raced inside and told their father everything that had happened. The woodcutter was furious and vowed to never let his children go into the forest again. But as the days passed, he noticed that his children were getting thinner and weaker. He knew he had to do something to help them. So one day he went to the market, where he met an old peddler who had a cart full of sweets and snacks. "I want you to take these children into the forest," he said, handing the man money, "and bring them back only when I call you." The peddler accepted the job and set off toward the forest with Hansel and Gretel in tow. As they walked, the peddler kept sneaking glances at the children. They looked so thin and weak. He couldn't bear to leave them in the forest any longer. So he stopped and asked, "Would you like to come back with me now?" When Hansel and Gretel heard this, they were overjoyed. They jumped into the cart and the peddler raced toward the cottage as fast as his donkey could pull him. When the woodcutter saw his children running toward him, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. He scooped them up in his arms and promised to never let anything bad happen to them ever again. He looked at the peddler and said, "You have done a good deed today. Here, take this as a reward." The peddler accepted the gift and continued on his way. The next day, the woodcutter decided to surprise his children and take them to the market. "You can pick whatever you want," he said with a big smile. Hansel and Gretel were so excited. They picked out delicious treats and brought them home. The woodcutter watched as they shared their treats with each other and felt a surge of happiness knowing that his children were happy. He knew that even though life was hard, they had each other and that was all that mattered. And as the sun set that evening, casting long shadows across the room, Hansel and Gretel huddled close to their father and whispered their dreams and hopes for the future.